Thanks for joining us here on the News at 10. Today, prosecutors announced they will seek the death penalty against Brian Kohberger if he is found guilty. Kohberger is the man charged with killing 4 University of Idaho students in their off-campus home in Moscow last November. Under Idaho law, the notice is required 60 days after the defendant enters a plea. We were there for Kohberger's arraignment in May. He stood silently, and a judge entered a not guilty plea for each count on his behalf. Kohberger's trial is currently set to begin in October, but he is due in court tomorrow for a hearing on several motions related to the case. The possibility of this being a death penalty case could also impact the trial's start date. And earlier this afternoon, we received a statement from the Gonzalez's family attorney, Shannon Gray, saying the Gonzalez family is grateful the prosecutor's office is pursuing the death penalty. There is no one more deserving than the defendant in this case. We continue to pray for all victims' families and appreciate all the support we have received. Now, tomorrow in Latah County District Court, the judge will hear arguments about pausing proceedings so Kohberger can fight his grand jury indictment. His attorneys want all the documents from the grand jury and time to review them, but the state disagrees. That's not the only issue that will be taken up tomorrow. Morgan Romero, usually in studio with me, is live in Moscow for us tonight with a preview of what we can expect. Morgan?
Well, Brian, we were standing in this exact spot a little over a month ago for Brian Kohberger's arraignment, which, as we just reported, came shortly after he was secretly indicted by a grand jury on 4 counts of murder and 1 burglary count. In May, Kohberger's defense team filed a motion asking for all the materials and records from the grand jury proceedings. They want it under a protective order so only people involved in the case can review it. But the defense and the prosecution cannot agree about what should be released. The state believes Kohberger is only entitled to an audio recording and transcript of those proceedings. So Latah County District Court Judge John Judge will hear their arguments here on that tomorrow. He will also hear why Kohberger's attorneys want to pause further legal proceedings. In documents filed a couple weeks ago, and as Brian alluded to, they said they plan to fight how the grand jury was chosen and fight the indictment in general. His defense attorneys also say they asked prosecutors for discovery or information. And while Latah County prosecutors provided a lot, there's certain information they haven't handed over because they say they don't have it or it doesn't exist, or they don't think they should provide it under Idaho law and rules. So the judge will hear arguments over Kohberger's motions to compel discovery tomorrow as well. Court documents show his team wants the state to give them information like all tips sent into law enforcement about the case, investigative reports and findings from cell phone analysis, and video that the FBI used to identify the white Hyundai Elantra as the suspect's car. Kohberger's attorneys also want information on the DNA profiles created during the investigation and all reports around law enforcement's genetic genealogy investigation. But prosecutors don't want to give the defense information about the genetic genealogy done to build the family tree that led to Brian Kohberger. In fact, they even asked the judge to issue a protective order for that info. Prosecutors say they are not relying on that for their case. Rather, they're relying on DNA from a cheek swab from Kohberger matching the DNA on the knife sheath found on the bed next to Maddie and Kaylee's bodies. In new court filings, Kohberger's attorneys accuse the state of trying to hide its entire case. They say it's unclear what police first relied on in focusing their investigation on him, the Elantra or genetic genealogy. They're seeking clarification on that. Also of note in those documents, attorneys say there was DNA belonging to 3 other males at the home on 1122 King Road, and there is no DNA evidence from the victims in Kohberger's apartment, office, home, or car. Attorneys from both sides will argue on all those issues in front of the judge tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. They're combining a lot of hearings into one, Brian, so we do expect those hearings to last for several hours. And as always, we will bring you the key takeaways right here on KTVB as well as on KTVB.com.
Well, Morgan, we kind of touched on this. These are going to take hours tomorrow. There's probably no guarantee the judge is going to rule on this for tomorrow. That trial is scheduled for October 2nd. Now it's a capital case. That's going to have to be pushed, I would assume, right?
That's what attorneys have been saying all along since the get-go, since John Judge, the judge here in Latah County District Court, set that trial date. It was really not many of us didn't expect that that was going to be the definitive date. And they say it's going to last for several weeks. That'll still be the case, but it's possible, after talking to attorneys here locally as well as in other parts of Idaho, that it could move to Boise or another part of Idaho, to Latah County or another county in Idaho, and it could be pushed back much further than October 2nd of this year. And you're right. I mean, we talked about this too in other stories that we've done, but when you try to go and seek a jury that's open to a capital punishment, so open to the death penalty, it's harder to find jurors that are open to it. So it makes that task of jury selection even more challenging as well.
All right, well, we'll find out what's going on with the next phase in that hearing tomorrow. We look forward to that. Thank you very much, Morgan.